Now the latest ITV news in the border region.
Hello there and welcome to Lookaround with a full half hour of news for the ITV border region. Making tonight's headlines.
Scottish Secretary Alister Jack says a new coal mine in Cumbria wouldn't necessarily clash with the government's net zero targets.
In a net transition, if you still have to make steel, you still have to work out what you can do as you transition.
Also, pedal powering the fight against climate change. Cycling campaigners head to Glasgow.
Plus, we meet a former mountaineer helping to boost Himalayan harvests.
And I'm here at Melrose, and joining me are sporting champions Mabel and Olive.
Thanks for joining us. First tonight then, as dozens of countries pledge to phase out coal-fired power, Scottish Secretary Alister Jack says a new coal mine in West Cumbria wouldn't necessarily clash with the UK government's net zero targets.
Mr Jack was at the COP26 conference in Glasgow, where 40 nations have made a commitment to slash carbon emissions by quitting coal. Well, the Dumfries and Galloway MPs said that as steel making needs coking coal, there is still a demand for supplies, while Britain increases its green energy output. Well, ITV reporter Yasmin Bottleby joins us now from Glasgow. Yasmin.
Do you know what? There is a lot of discussion, negotiation, argument, even conflict here at COP. And there is also that going on in Cumbria, isn't there? Because plans for a new mine at Woodhouse Colliery in Whitehaven are very, very divisive. Opponents say that it contradicts everything that's being said here at COP. Those in favour, though, say it could actually reduce our carbon footprint because it reduces the need to bring all that coal in to make the steel. Now, a planning inquiry into the proposals took place earlier this year. We should hear back from that at the end of December or the beginning of January. It's important to say that the commitments to phase out coal actually relate to coal-fired power stations, not to coking coal used for steel. But still, the government has come under a lot of criticism for not rejecting these plans. This is what the Scottish Secretary Alister Jack had to say.
In a net transition, if you still have to make steel, you still have to work out what you can do as you transition to net zero. So it's all part, it's like the oil fields, it's all part of a transition, a managed transition. We want more cash for developing countries to help them, we want to plant more trees, we want to reduce our reliance on cars, and we absolutely want to stop emitting coal. Coal does more carbon release and carbon damage than any other product.
Well, now, as everybody here has been discussing today, and I'm sure you can hear the buzz that's behind me, if we want to phase out coal and get to net zero, we're going to need more renewable sources of energy. Fiona Marley-Patterson has been looking at how Cumbria and the south of Scotland could be key to achieving that.
West Cumbria, the birthplace of the world's first commercial-scale nuclear power plant, with plans for another. Some argue we need nuclear to get to net zero, at least until battery technology can sustain peak supply. But could Cumbria's windy coast be our renewable future?
So the big opportunities really are kind of arguably more of these onshore wind sites like we've got behind us. So onshore wind has been held back in the last 10 years as a result of quite restrictive planning regulations, but also being blocked out of kind of subsidy schemes that have been used to boost offshore wind generation, which is where we're seeing a lot of the growth. And we need to kind of double really onshore wind capacity across the country, and there's huge kind of potential for that here in Cumbria. So you get small amounts of generation happening at schools or with kind of solar panels on the roof, smaller wind farms like the one we stood outside here today, and that you can actively balance kind of when people demand energy and when energy is being generated in a much more dynamic way than you currently get. So you get a much more responsive grid where you can get energy flowing back and forward rather than just out from the centre. And what that will mean is that we don't any longer need kind of the bulk generation which is causing all the issues, and we can kind of move to a position where we have nearly 100% renewable generation.
But inshore Cumbria is the Lake District National Park. Large wind farms aren't likely to get planning permission here, though there are some small ones on buildings.
Because the greatest threat to the national park is the climate change we've witnessed. So we simply must do our bit to reduce our carbon. And that does mean seeing more things like small-scale wind power, hydropower, and air source, ground source and lake source heat pumps.
But the Lake District does have a lot of water. This was the UK's first hydroelectric powered pub. It converts the energy of Stickle Gill into electricity.
When we first bought the pub, we were on LPG gas and mains electric. Being in a 17th century bank barn, it's got a lot of holes, it's got a lot of drafts, it's got no insulation. So we are really trying to, reduce our impact as much as we can. Our summers are getting hotter, so we have had periods of really dry drought. We actually ended up having to almost shut for 6 weeks because we had no water at all.
So climate change itself is actually preventing you from being able to use what you put in for climate change.
It really was a wake-up call because we're reliant on the gill as well for our drinking water and sort of being able to operate.
Now, when you put the hydroelectric scheme in, it was very controversial. A lot of local people didn't like what you were doing here in a national park. So how do we do this in a way that is sympathetic to the fact that this is a World Heritage Site?
In the sort of first 6 months, it didn't look very pretty, and here we are 5 years later, you can't really tell that it's there. The Lakes is one of the wettest places in the country, so it kind of makes sense to harness as much green electric as possible.
This paper factory uses enough electricity to power 8,000 homes, but it has roof space. They hope to cover it with solar panels. But they're also reusing the heat they create.
That heat traditionally has been only circulated to a small degree. We intend to capture a much bigger proportion of that heat and use heat pump technology to compress that heat, turn it back into steam and backfeed the system again.
And we can recycle heat in homes. Near Lockerbie, this was the first passive house estate in Scotland.
A passive house is a house that's been designed to lose so little heat that you don't need a conventional heating system. For a 3-bedroom house, they typically say if you add up all the gaps in a building, a passive house, it comes down to a business card size hole. And that's all the gaps throughout the entire house. That's all you're allowed. So you pressurise the house and you hold up smoke pens and you will see the smoke pouring out through the tiniest of gaps. And you just follow it around, seal them up. The sun's energy is free, it's always free. So big windows in the south and fewer smaller windows on the north side because you will always lose heat from the north. The Eco Bling, which is, we still attach it. We have the solar thermal panels, we have solar PV, they're valuable. But if you've got a really low energy, really efficient house, those systems can be really small. Technology is not going to solve this one. It is going to be ordinary people being able to take their own lives forward and deliver their own net zero solutions.
Water is heated with solar panels and the fire. It's still considered a new idea, yet this is 10 years old. Now eco designs are often the more expensive, but these were designed to be affordable rents. The developer says it just made financial sense.
You avoid all rental void because people were, in theory, keen to take on a house that had so much less energy. So why not just bite the bullet and avoid having to retrofit these homes in 5 years' time.
So why don't we build all new developments like this?
So it's not illegal to build a house with a gas boiler. Obviously, we'd encourage people not to do that and build renewables in. And for a new property, that's a requirement in the national park now. So they need at least 30% of the energy that the building uses produced through renewable means on site. Of course, we'd really encourage everybody that owns property in the national park to make sure it's very energy efficient. Brockhole House is a really good example of that, built at the turn of the century. We're now pumping heat out of the lake and into that building. Good insulation, good double glazed windows that keep the vernacular style of the windows.
Pressure is ramping up to change how we heat and power our homes and businesses. Fiona Marley-Patterson, ITV News.
Well, meanwhile, a group of cyclists from Dumfries have set off for Glasgow to take part in the Pedal on Cop event. Up to 1,000 demonstrators on bikes from all over Britain are expected to converge on Scotland's biggest city.
Their aim is to highlight the importance of cycling to the climate change fight and call for more cycle-friendly funding. Bruce Mackenzie reports.
Over the last few days, we've spoken a lot about COP and how it matters and why it matters to people across the border region. Today, this group of cyclists are making the 77-mile journey to Glasgow to make sure their voices are heard as they talk about active travel and pedal on COP. As they were getting ready to leave, we caught a few words with them.
Well, it's just been really disappointing to hear that they're just not talking about cycling or active travel or even public transport when they're talking about transport emissions. So we're here to kind of bring our voice to the table and say, look, there's this solution here that's waiting, that's ready. We can't wait for everybody to get an electric car. We've got to start getting people out of their cars and using different means of travel already. We've had this perfect tool for fighting climate change for so long, and yet we're looking to sort of new technology to save it. We've had this technology for so long, let's use it.
OK, well, talking of technology, we'll move over now to Vicky, who's going to be doing the cycle on an e-bike. Vicky, how long have you had the bike and how have you found the move to the e-bike?
Well, I started with e-bikes about 5 years ago. This is actually now my second one. I can honestly say I wouldn't be cycling if it wasn't for an e-bike. I tried cycling normally, I'll take my hats off to the other guys, but I'd left it too long and I wasn't fit enough. So I bought an e-bike and found I covered, over 12,000 miles on it. And from what Sally was saying, these really are a game changer in personal travel, because they take away the hills. They don't take all the effort away, you still get fit. But it does mean that I stay just about 7 miles outside of Dumfries, and I can quite easily pop in on the bike and do a shop and that sort of thing, and I don't have to get in my car.
One of those seeing the cyclists off today was the council leader, Elaine Murray. I asked her if the council's doing enough to make places like this accessible for active travel.
I think we can always do more, and one of the things I would like to see is an escalation of the introduction of 20-mile-an-hour zones, which obviously came in the borders and have been quite successful. And we're keen to have a look at things like that, which will make it easier for people to be able to cycle, in our towns and smaller communities. So yes, I think we have done a fair amount in partnership with people like Sustrans, but I think there's probably always more that you can do to encourage people not to use the car and to walk or to cycle instead.
21 years ago, signs like this popped up around the country trying to get more of us on our bikes. The cyclists on their way to Glasgow hope that call will only get louder in the days to come. Bruce Mackenzie, ITV News in Dumfries.
On to some of the day's other news now, and a Cumbrian footballer fighting for his life in Australia has left intensive care. 26-year-old Danny Hodgson, originally from Cleator Moor, was attacked in Perth, where he'd been living. His parents, Nicola and Peter, said their son was still in a critical condition and they were in awe of his courage and spirit. The former Carlisle United youth player is being cared for by neurosurgeons.
A Dumfries registered trawler that had been detained in a row over fishing rights has been released by the French authorities. Macduff Shellfish, which owns the boat, said they're pleased to have the matter resolved and delighted that their crew and vessel can now return home.
Plans for a shooting range near a Buddhist monastery in the south of Scotland have been taken to appeal. The Scottish Government is being asked to rule on the scheme near the Sami Ling Tibetan Centre at Easteal Muir. Developers say the project creates jobs, but opponents believe it's too close to the monastery.
The Conservative MP for Carlisle says the government should have accepted the suspension of Owen Paterson. He was found to have broken the parliamentary rules by using his position as an MP to benefit two companies he was working for as an advisor. Yesterday, John Stevenson was among only a handful of Tory MPs who voted against his own party. They had tried to postpone Paterson's suspension for breaching rules to prevent lobbying. Today, the MP for North Shropshire resigned.
I was on the Standards Committee for 2 years. I understand the rigour that they go through, the investigations that they have, the deliberations. They came to a conclusion. It was a unanimous decision of that committee, which is 7 MPs and 7 lay members on it. I think what should have happened was Parliament accept the decision of that Standards Committee, because they have done their investigation. That has always been the precedent in the past, and I think we should have followed it yesterday.
You're watching Lookaround. Thank you very much for your company this Thursday evening. Still to come.
I'm Andrew Cotter. Coming up later in the programme, I'll be here at the Borders Book Festival with these 2 co-authors.
And the Northern Lights made an appearance across much of the region if you were lucky last night. But are they on the way again? I'll have the Aurora forecast and the weather forecast later in the programme.
Next to my man from Keswick is heading out to Nepal to help plant 10,000 trees for local people. Former mountaineer Glenn Rowley will supervise and plant fruit and nut trees in a remote valley which the community there can harvest.
Sounds like hard work, doesn't it? Well, the project was inspired through Glenn's many trekking expeditions in the area over the past 3 decades. With more, here's Matthew Taylor.
In the remote Kinja Valley, 100 miles from Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, fruit trees are being distributed to help local people. And not just a few trees, 10,000 to be exact. The man in charge of the project has been organising things from his desk in Keswick.
We can give them fruit trees, help them plant the fruit trees on land that's not being used, and then they can live off the fruit for 10 years, and at the end of the 10 years they can use the wood.
The project was started at the end of last year and there are still 4,000 saplings left to plant, so Glenn's about to go out to Nepal for himself.
When we took the last 4,000 in May, we decided to give 60% to locals to plant in their own gardens, their own land, just to speed it up. It's the same net result, and we'd give 2 or 3 trees to a family. It was all done really organised, and a lot of people turned up for the trees, and they were all keen to do it as often as we can. So when we go out again at the end of November, it's the same thing. 60% will be given to local villages, and we'll supervise the remainder to be planted on government land.
The tree planting is the second project that the Juniper Trust has been involved in. Since 2015, they've been rebuilding schools that were destroyed in a powerful earthquake. They've completed 18 and have a target of 20.
We've got 2 left to do, and then we're going to concentrate on sustainability. We're going to help the schools with providing libraries and teacher training, and not build any more, just concentrating on helping the ones that we've rebuilt now.
And what is it that motivates you to help?
I wanted to help because it was a way of putting something back to all the people that have helped me in the Himalayas over the last 30 years. We've done food drops this February and March to villages in the middle of nowhere to help families that were starving. It's just rewarding, and I've built up a team now of 10 people in the Juniper Trust that are all volunteers and are all passionate about putting something back.
Nepal has been badly affected by COVID restrictions that have prevented tourists from arriving in the country. That's something many people rely on for their income. So organisers hope that by planting trees, people will have another way of earning money in the future. Matthew Taylor, ITV News, Keswick.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues after us with your national and international headlines.
Coming up on the programme, the Tory MP at the centre of a lobbying row resigns. Owen Paterson quits Westminster just hours after a government U-turn over their attempts to clear him. But how much lasting damage has been done? A game-changing new COVID drug is cleared for use by the NHS. And
what's your name? What's your name, sweetheart?
my name is Cleo. A miracle moment. Missing Cleo was found as she's reunited with her mother. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Now, last weekend, the Daily Mirror Pride of Britain Awards was held in London. We sent our regional winner, Mark Harding, to the ceremony.
Yes, Mark is a former soldier from Wigton who was severely wounded on active service in Afghanistan, but has gone on since to raise thousands of pounds, all for good causes. He joined a host of celebrities on the red carpet, and you can catch up with the ceremony at 8 o'clock here on ITV.
Well, earlier in the week, Helen Carnell caught up with co-host Ashley Banjo to find out more about this year's show.
Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. Goodness me, what a privilege it must be to co-host something like the Pride of Britain Awards.
Absolutely. It's something that I've kind of, the Pride of Britain Awards I've been around and involved with for a little while now, but to actually co-host the event alongside Carol, get to learn about the amazing winners, get to meet them, find out their stories, and just be part of that moment for them in a way. It was just a real full circle moment for me that I'll never forget. So yeah, very, very privileged.
Some very remarkable stories, incredible people that you will have learnt about through the whole process. Anything in particular, or anyone in particular, that have stood out for you this time round?
That's an impossible question, really. There were so many incredible winners on the night, but I'm not going to give too much away. Make sure you tune in tonight, 8 o'clock, to find out. But there were a couple of winners, one in particular, a group of people actually, who we will all be able to relate to. But I don't mean personally, I mean as a nation, as a world. We've been through a pandemic, and there are some people that have really helped us see the other end of that pandemic. And they are there on stage tonight. So very, very, very grateful for them. Real life superheroes.
Absolutely, and of course at the heart of it is fundraising and raising awareness of the good things that people do. And throughout the pandemic, as you say, incredibly difficult circumstances, people still looking out for other people.
Which we wouldn't have got through it if we didn't do that, looking out for one another. And I feel like the pandemic and the lockdown made the world slow down to a completely different pace. And we really needed one another, to get through. And to be able to sort of recognise some people that did some of these extraordinary things, that's what the Pride of Britain's all about. So, absolutely. They deserve these awards and they deserve this moment.
Let's just take a moment to reflect on ITV Borders fundraiser of the year, Mark Harding. He was quite a special candidate in this team, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, his story, losing the use of his legs and sort of doing things that nobody else in his situation has ever done before to raise money for different charities is incredible. That takes a serious amount of drive and determination. But then I suppose, what do you expect? He's a soldier, came back from serving in Afghanistan, and he just used all of that drive and determination that made him good at his job to go on now and raise thousands of pounds for other people. So just a really good guy, a really good soul, and a really disciplined, amazing worker.
An incredible chap, and we're going to see more people like him and his stories tonight. Ashley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you can watch the Pride of Britain Awards here on ITV from 8 o'clock this evening. It's hosted by Carol Vorderman and Ashley Banjo.
Right then, attention book lovers, the Borders Book Festival is well underway at Abbotsford House near Melrose, and this year the event is taking place over 6 days with a variety, it says here, of special guests.
Yeah, and these are lots of special guests, and today regulars like Rory Bremner and Michael Palin take centre stage, along with a new face to the festival and his four-legged friends who found fame in lockdown. Alex Isaac has more.
Well, how fitting that it should come down to these two. Olive in her familiar black, 5 times the champion, Mabel the rising star.
It was a video that became a lockdown internet sensation. An out-of-work sports reporter with nothing better to do than to commentate on his dogs eating breakfast.
Seems just a little sluggish here.
More videos followed, and before you know it, Olive, Mabel and their owner Andrew Cotter were all over social media, bringing a ray of sunshine amidst the gloom of lockdown. For the three of them, life would never be the same again.
Read out, you're a good dog. Yes, you are. Who's a good dog? You're a good dog. I'm glad it makes you happy.
Andrew, thanks so much for joining me, both with Mabel and Olive here. So we just had a look at your video there, the first one, and Did you think when you made it that it would go viral and people would love it?
No, not at all. And that first one, that seems a long time ago now, but yeah, that one quickly got over 10 million views, and then the next one over 20 million on Twitter alone. It just kept on going on from there, and making a Zoom video and doing online dating with Olive. A video I hasten to add, I wasn't doing online dating with Olive, but it just kept on going. I think there are over 20 videos now and approaching 90 million views around the world, which is strange because they're just my dogs. As you can see, all she's interested in Olive there is trying to find some food. So I give them these characters in the videos which are close to their characters, but really they don't talk to me quite as much as I make out. So what are you doing? I mean, she's doing nothing. Look, she's just confused by, I don't know, somebody walking around. Anyway, but yeah, they're beautiful dogs, and I hope that comes across as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it's been so interesting to see them have that personality, because you think you know so much about them. But now you've written 2 books and you're doing a little bit of a tour here at Melrose as well. So how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, well, we did a stage tour around the country, and here we are at the Borders Book Festival. I mean, Abbotsford. I mean, is this what Walter Scott had in mind? A couple of dogs wandering around, giving talks. So, and then a couple of books. The latest one, Dog Days, which is of the last year. It's a diary of the last year, and trying to laugh, if that's possible, at some of the strange things we did during the pandemic, and hopefully the love of dogs comes across as well.
Well, I think you've definitely brought some absolute joy into people's lives. Now, obviously you've been on a bit of walk around here. So have you got any places that you found the best in the south of Scotland while you're here?
Well, I mean, I'm originally from Troon, so I live in England now, but I thought they love a beach in Troon, but across here, we've been wandering around the grounds here on a day like today when the autumn colours are out there are a few places better. They can find some sticks to chew. She's growling at something which she never does as well. This is terrible on camera. I don't know, you should be looking at the camera, you should be looking at it, you shouldn't be doing any of this. They've seen something over there, but they know when to perform.
So Walter Scott's ghost, you never know. Just a quick final question. Obviously you are a sports commentator, so are you going to go back to doing that, or is this now going to be what's going forward?
No, I am doing that again. It was a very busy summer with Wimbledon, the Olympics, the Open Championship, and we're doing rugby this autumn. So there is that, but this will always be, I think, an alternative part of my life as well.
So dogs will stay at home?
The dogs will stay at home, yeah. Can you imagine them as co-commentators? It wouldn't work.
I don't think so either. Obviously, Andrew is on today, but the book festival is going on until Sunday, and hopefully the weather will stay out until then. Alex Isat, ITV News.
I absolutely loved those videos through lockdown. They were very funny. But the dogs looked totally nonplussed by fame. They even had their back to the reporter there. Poor Alex. Oh, yeah.
Now then, some funny green lights in the sky last night. I'm pleased to say our very own Aurora Borealis.
Oh, thank you.
Working on that all day.
Okay, before anything, let's get to the pictures because, they were very impressive. Stunning
really
shots.
Good ones.
This is what we had taken last night. Across the region. Beautiful, beautiful scenes. The Northern Lights made a fantastic appearance, particularly in the west, bit too much cloud in the east. These photos here taken with long exposure. Some cameras particularly good at doing this, but actually last night you could even see them with the naked eye. And we got this time lapse taken in Workington, looking absolutely amazing. So they're appearing up pretty much anywhere we had those clearer skies, darker conditions. Again, look towards the north there. Stunning as well at Sycamore Gap. Now, there is a chance that we could be seeing them again tonight. So we'll take a very quick look at the Aurora forecast here. Bit further north than yesterday, but still looking quite intense, and some clearer skies on the way.
That sunshine really made your eyeshadow pop, you know? And you put the wipe in the bin, not the toilet.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Border Weather.
Go Egg Queen.
We've seen some good spells of sunshine today, and in the sunshine, temperatures not feeling too bad. Through this evening, though, because of those clearer skies, temperatures initially dipping down, quite chilly at times, but clouds spilling in into the early hours. That'll bring a scattering of showers too tomorrow, sometimes on the breezy side, heavier rain on the way as we look towards the weekend. This area of high pressure here having more of an influence, and that's because things are toppling around over that. We're going to see breezy conditions developing through the later part of tomorrow as this area of rain starts to move its way in, sometimes on the heavy side, particularly through the start of Saturday. Now, for now, we are looking at those clearer skies and falling temperatures. We're going to see temperatures dropping down to around freezing in those more rural spots over the next few hours. But as the cloud rolls in into the early hours, the temperatures will start to lift. Breezes begin to pick up a bit as well as temperatures climb to around 6 or 7 degrees. So it's not as chilly as we go into tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, as we start the day, quite a bit of cloud around, some murky conditions as well. As you can see here, that cloud is starting to thin and break. We are seeing some brighter skies, some sunny spells developing, certainly as we head through the day. But where the cloud is thick enough, a scattering of these showers, sometimes slow moving as well with those lighter breezes as temperatures climb to highs of around 11 or 12 degrees. Now, it's later on the winds will start to pick up and we'll begin to start to watch the west, that area of low pressure starting to push its way in from the north. So overnight into Saturday, the cloud will start to thicken, the winds pick up. We're looking at those spells of rain pushing through. That's going to last through much of the day. Some heavy spells of rain indicated by the brighter colours in the mix there. So a bit of a mixed up next few days. We do have some sunny skies around, but temperatures will be holding up in the double figures.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Border Weather.
Those eyebrows are unreal.
Thank you, Ross. In just a moment, the national and the international news tonight with Mary Nightingale.
I'm back with the late bulletin at 10:30, and after that I'm going to drive home and watch the Northern Lights. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye
for now.